And they said, well, you're crazy. You haven't written a song with a chorus for 4 years.
When people talk about Led Zeppelin, they often focus on the explosive chemistry between Jimmy Page's guitar wizardry, Robert Plant's soaring vocals, and John Bonham's thunderous drumming. But lurking in the shadows of that spotlight was John Paul Jones, the quiet genius who stitched together Zeppelin's sound with his bass lines, keyboards, and arrangements. He was the one who gave the chaos structure, the man who made the storm sound like a symphony. Yet, despite his essential role, there was one moment in Zeppelin's career that cut deeper than any other for him. A song that was meant to showcase the band's boldness ended up becoming, in his eyes, the biggest insult of his career. That song was All My Love. To understand why this track left such a scar, you have to step back and see where the band was at the end of the 1970s. Zeppelin was no longer the reckless force that had burst out of London in 1968. The years of endless touring, drug abuse, and personal tragedies had taken their toll. Robert Plant had lost his young son in 1977, a loss that nearly ended the band altogether. Jimmy Page was deeply entangled in heroin, his performances unpredictable and often erratic. John Bonham was drowning in alcohol and spiraling out of control. And then there was John Paul Jones, the consummate professional who remained disciplined, musically precise, and committed to keeping the band alive. All My Love emerged during the recording of In Through the Outdoor in 1978. Unlike Zeppelin's earlier albums, where Page dominated as the visionary and Bonham powered everything forward, this record leaned heavily on Jones. He was the one coming into the studio every day, sober and prepared, carrying the weight of a band that was falling apart. While Page was often absent and Bonham unreliable, Jones stepped into the role of the architect, filling the gaps with his mastery of synthesizers and arrangements. It was Jones who built the framework for All My Love, a song written as a tribute by Plant to his late son. The lush keyboards, the sweeping atmosphere, the backbone that allowed Plant to pour his grief into music, all of that came from Jones. Yet instead of being celebrated, the song soon became the wedge that drove him further into the margins of the band. Why? Because All My Love was everything Jimmy Page despised. Page saw Zeppelin as a hard rock juggernaut, a blues-drenched machine fueled by aggression, mysticism, and raw power. To him, All My Love was soft, sentimental, and worst of all, keyboard-driven. It wasn't built on riffs, it wasn't anchored in Bonham's groove, and it didn't have the danger that defined Zeppelin's identity. Page reportedly dismissed it as too pop, while fans and critics alike debated whether it even belonged on a Zeppelin record. For Jones, who had poured his soul into the song, this was devastating. What made it worse was that Plant adored the song. For him, it wasn't just another track, it was personal. It was his way of processing unimaginable grief. And in Plant's eyes, Jones was the only one who stepped up to help him express that grief musically. Page may have been the visionary of Zeppelin's early years, but on All My Love, he was absent. The track was carried by Jones, and instead of being praised, Jones found himself dismissed for it. The insult became clear in how the band treated the song after its release. Zeppelin rarely performed All My Love live. Page never pushed for it, and Bonham never embraced it. To them, it was an outlier, a moment of weakness on an otherwise hard-hitting album. Jones, who had invested so much in shaping its sound, was left standing on the outside, his work treated as disposable within the very band he had kept alive. For Jones, it wasn't just about one song. It was about years of being overlooked. He had been the one writing arrangements, composing bass lines that elevated Page's riffs, and experimenting with sounds that kept Zeppelin from becoming stale. Yet whenever people talked about Zeppelin, it was always about the golden god Plant, the guitar hero Page, or the unstoppable Bonham. Jones was the forgotten one, the silent craftsman, and when the song he had built, one of the only tracks in Zeppelin's catalog that leaned on him entirely, was written off as weak, it stung like nothing else. There's a cruel irony here. All My Love became one of the band's most commercially successful tracks from their final era. It received radio play, connected with audiences emotionally, and showed a side of Zeppelin that was rarely seen. For many fans, it was proof that the band could be more than just thunder and riffs. But inside the Zeppelin machine, it became the song that branded Jones as the odd man out. When In Through the Outdoor was released in 1979, critics were divided. Some praised it as a bold evolution, while others slammed it as a keyboard-driven mess. What many didn't realize was that the keyboards were Jones, carrying the weight of a band in collapse. Page was fading, Bonham was slipping, and Plant was grieving. Jones was the one doing the work. Yet instead of recognition, he received silence, or worse, disdain. For John Paul Jones, All My Love wasn't just another track. It was the one time his role was front and center, where his contribution wasn't just supportive, but essential. And that's what made the reaction to it such an insult. He had delivered the song Plant needed, and in doing so, kept Zeppelin moving forward. But instead of being acknowledged, he was told it was too soft, too pop, too un-Zeppelin. This rejection added to a growing sense of isolation. By the time Zeppelin reached their final tour in 1980, Jones was detached. He wasn't part of the chaos of Page and Bonham, nor was he Plant's equal partner. He was the quiet man, the disciplined one, the musician who showed up when no one else did. And yet, when the spotlight briefly turned his way, the band recoiled. The insult of All My Love never truly left him. Even in later years, when Zeppelin reunited for special performances, the song was conspicuously absent. It wasn't part of their legacy, at least not in the way Stairway to Heaven or Kashmir was. For fans, it remained a hidden gem, a track that revealed a rare vulnerability. But for Jones, it stood as a reminder that his greatest contribution to Zeppelin's later years was the very thing his bandmates couldn't stand. Looking back, it's clear that All My Love represented the fracture at the heart of Zeppelin. Plant's grief, Jones's professionalism, Page's decline, and Bonham's self-destruction. They were all encapsulated in that one song. It was the sound of a band pulling in different directions, barely holding together.